The concept of a supreme guardian falling to profound melancholy is deeply alarming, challenging our fundamental need for absolute security. As children, we view our parents as infallible protectors, unable to accept their vulnerability or tears. At that tender age, adults seem like all-powerful beings who should easily withstand any tragedy. Yet, divine tears have always flowed through our stories, reflecting the profound sorrow of the creators. There are tragedies so immense that they can shatter even the most powerful of guardians. When a creator despairs, the very pieces of their broken world fall upon the creation itself. In Hayao Miyazaki's masterpiece, we find a world completely flooded with a deep, lingering melancholy. The realm quakes under the heavy, sorrowful shoulders of its aging and disheartened monarch. Like the legendary Fisher King, this ruler's internal wounds manifest physically across his entire domain. To keep his creation from crumbling, he must constantly balance a precarious tower of stone blocks. Believing his works no longer hold any true value, he slowly sinks into absolute despair. It is impossible to understand this grieving God without examining the creator's personal creative struggles. Miyazaki's capacity for building vast, imaginative worlds borders on the truly divine and transcendent. Yet, like his character, he remains deeply pessimistic about the legacy of his own creations.
The true Fisher King of this story is not any character, but the author himself.
For the inhabitants of a fictional world, the creator's profound melancholy is indeed the sorrow of a supreme guardian. When the creator weeps, every single character in the story must feel the falling rain.
What do we truly think of when we contemplate the tears of a powerful deity?
In fiction, when a higher power rains misery, they often literally make it rain on subjects. Rain in storytelling acts as a direct command from above that it is time for deep reflection.
This thematic connection is beautifully explored in the animated film Sirocco and the Kingdom of Winds.
Here, mortals live in constant fear of the unpredictable mood swings of a melancholy storm god.
Sirocco mirrors the temperamental weather deities found throughout traditional mythologies and ancient folklore.
Yet, Sirocco is not the true author of the melancholy that grips his entire land. Within the film's framework, he and his kingdom are merely the dream of a human novelist. This world was created to help her process the intense grief of losing her beloved sister.
When Sirocco weeps, he is simply crying the tears of another suffering human being.
The question of who truly owns our tears is like asking who owns the falling rain.
In his classic treatise, Robert Burton claimed that deep depression comes straight from the heavens.
He was also an early proponent of how weather itself can profoundly dampen the human spirit. Rogue waves and violent storms have traditionally inspired much moodier deities than simple rainfall.
And this line here marks the old trade route, far across the mountains.
Did people really travel that far on foot?
To behold a true tidal wave is to feel the presence of a volatile, angry deity. The legendary ocean-themed animated film masterfully instills this overwhelming sense of cosmic awe. The sea itself, with its unknowable depths, feels far more like a god than any character. We feel the ocean's massive body throughout the film, pulsing with a colossal, ancient rhythm.
It is self-evident why almost every human culture worships a tempestuous god of the waters. Water is always moving, changing form, or threatening to destroy our fragile vessels entirely.
Carl Jung theorized that these deities emerged to explain the unpredictable and harsh processes of nature.
When the gods are calm, the sea is gentle. When angry, it churns violently.
And when they fall into deep despair, the entire world must come to an end.
One of the most universal narratives in human history is that of the Great Deluge. A massive flood brought on by a higher force, despairing over the state of humanity.
While Norse mythology does not end in water, it ends in a flood of ice. Fimbulwinter is a freezing melancholy that completely entombs the earth before the final battle. In a popular mythological action game, the link between divine sorrow and the Great Collapse is explicit.
The game tells the story of Kratos quietly despairing over his wife's tragic death.
Now, his heavy emotions are frozen solid, locked in ice like the rest of this frozen realm. But Kratos is not the only god suffering from a deeply fitting seasonal depression. Thor acts as Kratos' direct parallel, grieving lost family and his own monstrous past. While Kratos strives to change, Thor is determined to prove he is beyond redemption. Thor welcomes the infernal rage of Ragnarok, finding it far better than cold despair. In fiction, a god's depression is often treated as a joke, but not here.
Thor's decline is tearing his family apart, with a grim, devastatingly realistic portrayal.
Even with the apocalypse looming near, grief remains the most powerful force in this world. There are over 1,000 ways to translate the biblical passages describing God's grief. If there is a consistent thread throughout these ancient texts, it is profound sorrow. Most translations agree that it was not anger, but grief that unleashed the floodwaters.
Despair and the end of days flow together in the dark anime, Devilman, Crybaby.
The show's wild visual style does not prepare you for its central, crushing tragedy. It tells of a fallen angel, desperate to be avenged by erasing all of humanity. The story gives equal weight to a single tear and the destruction of the planet.
We realize too late that there is absolutely nothing left after the flood clears.
Where do you even begin after everything has been erased by divine anguish?
In the game The Unfinished Swan, players must throw paint to reveal a blank world.
This featureless void is the remnant of a vast kingdom abandoned by its creator.
The game is a beautiful metaphor for how deep depression can erase creative work.
The player character is the son of a painter who left hundreds of unfinished pieces. The narrative and gameplay perfectly complement this journey through a fragmented, lost canvas.
The sorrowful monarch is voiced by a veteran creative artist, famous for complex productions.
For an artist, the cost of portraying a despairing god may be personal despair.
It is remarkable how far artists will go to capture the melancholy of creation.
The pigment ultramarine literally means beyond the sea, reflecting its incredibly distant origins.
Creators have always sought out this color to paint both vibrant and bleak scenes. We have a deep human need to find shades of blue that match our sorrow.
With a suitably despondent eye, even a beautiful natural landscape can appear to frown.
This impulse is placed under a unique cinematic lens in the Icelandic film Godland.
The story of a priest trying to build a church in a hostile wilderness.
The narrow frame forces the viewer to constantly consider the limits of the scene.
The priest views the unforgiving landscape as a direct punishment from his god.
In his book, Jonathan Sadowski describes how early Christians characterized despair as a demon.
As the priest's sanity declines, the film offers a different view of the land.
To the locals, the wilderness is not a curse, but simply the way things are.
Despair, it seems, exists entirely in the eye of the sorrowful beholder.
We expect great, highly talented creators to suffer for their art, especially melancholic art.
Is it an inherent truth that to create is to suffer and despair?
The Twilight Zone episode Shadow Play brilliantly explores this terrifying, existential concept. A man insists that the entire universe is merely a product of his dream. If he is executed, the entire world and everyone in it will vanish.
Perhaps the act of creation is always a beautiful, yet deeply terrifying dream. Perhaps the act of creation is always a beautiful, yet deeply terrifying dream.